Dryden, hopefully I pronounced your name correctly, but please correct me if I didn't. Great to be working with you again. Lots of good stuff to work on. Got your notes as well on the heel toe. Apologies about that. Good to know though. So lots of good stuff to work on here. And you're driving really well. Even in traffic, I really liked your turn six. I really liked your carousel. I can tell that you have a good idea on sort of the priorities and the fundamentals of which we want to work on. But what I want to work with you on today is really the adding one additional reference point that I think will naturally get your eyes up a little bit more, and it'll give you a really crystal clear understanding of another point or another really critical point in the corner. And essentially that reference point is, where do we want the minimum speed in every corner to come? It's something that's really a big part of racing, a big part of driving, is to have a crystal clear understanding of, in every corner, where is my minimum speed? And if I know where my minimum speed is, I know where my acceleration point is, and I know where my brake zone ends, right? So if we start breaking this down here, we'll approach into turn one. Let me turn the volume off here. One quick note in turn one here. This is a subtle note here, but there's a pretty large gap from where you come off of the throttle. You're starting your lifting here at the end of the pit wall. But now we're lifting, and then our brake application starts right in here. You can see the front nose dive, and of course the data starts. So we just want to be flat, off, and then brake. Let's reduce down that coast period time, right? So into turn one, where do we want our minimum speed to come? Turn one minimum speed for me should come right in here, okay? So if we kind of look at your minimum speed, you'll notice your minimum speed comes way back in here, right? So what's happening, and I'm not saying here that I'm having a higher minimum speed than you. I'm not saying I'm having a lower minimum speed. All we're just talking about right now is, where in the corner does our min speeds come? So yours coming right here. I actually want our minimum speed to come where that car is, right? So what's happening here is, in a lot of corners, not all, we're over slowing, our minimum speed's coming too early in the corner. What do then? You feed throttle back in to make up for that. And now we're kind of driving through the corner on throttle, and the car's really fighting us here, right? So if we were to try to draw our GPS speeds, the difference is, you're going to kind of have something like this. You're going to have that minimum speed. You're going to try to get the throttle, and it's going to do something like this. And then eventually you slowly get it back. I'm going to exaggerate this just to make a point, okay? But essentially the difference is, I'm going to come in, and I'm probably going to brake a little bit deeper, but it's more about kind of where I come off the brakes and really being able to roll in more entry speed. And let's say our minimum speed's even the same, but my minimum speed's coming much later. I'm now going to not have that partial throttle understeer that you're creating. I'm going to have a better rotation, which is allowing me to feed the throttle more aggressively. And that means I'm going to have an even better exit than you as well. Okay, so what we're doing here is, we want to have a really crystal clear understanding of where that minimum speed's coming to be able to get our eyes up, right? So the second part of this is, now, okay, I know where my minimum speed's coming. I want my minimum speed to come right in this area here. And it's the minimum speed because that's also where my acceleration starts. So now what I want you to do is, that's an extra reference point for you to use in the brake zone. So as we come through and we're attacking the brake zones here, what I want you to do now is, in this brake zone, we're looking for the turning point right now, right? I just want you to glance in to where you want your minimum speed to come, and then get back to the turning points. We're not staring there too early. That would be your eyes are too far up. But what I'm trying to hopefully help you realize is, man, I got so much more in this corner to continue to slow the car down, and that's going to naturally help you bring in your brake zones and release off the brakes earlier. So now you'll realize, oh shit, I'm over slowing. Let me get off the brakes and roll speed in here. So your minimum speed doesn't come here. Your minimum speed's coast comes now. Feed throttle back to full throttle. Now you've rolled in a lot more entry speed because of that. So same note. Let's take a look. Where is your minimum speed in turn three coming? Right. So we're on the brakes. Let's take a look. 111. 109, 108, 106, 105. So does it get lower than 105? Looks like 105 is going to be our minimum speed, right? So where does that 105 start? It starts back in here. So if you remember, The second part of that speed trace is you had what we call sort of a rounded bottom. So you kind of come through, you brake, and your speed trace does something like this. You spend quite a long time at that minimum speed. The other difference here is by coming in and rolling in more entry speed and knowing where my minimum speed comes, I'm going to have more of a V-shaped bottom. Again, I'm exaggerating this a little bit, right? But I know, hey, I want my minimum speed to come sort of out over here. So another 2 car lengths later. But then because I'm going to have the car more rotated, I'm going to be able to be more aggressive to throttle. I'm going to spend less time at that minimum speed where you see, look how long we're at 105. 105. That's 1 car length, 2 car lengths, 2.5 car lengths. Well, really, it should be a touch 105 and go again, right? So that's going to help you really feed in the throttle a little bit later. And the second part here is notice how you're feeding throttle, well, and then you have to release off of it. Let me back this up, right? You're starting to go, release off of it, and then feed it back. So now because of all this, because your minimum speed comes too early, you're on throttle early, now your throttle trace looks something like this, and you release off of it, and then we kind of get back to full throttle here, right? What do I want my throttle trace to look like? I'm not getting back to full throttle that much earlier than you, but it's probably looks something a little bit more like this, right? Wait, boom, go. So these are the central theme here is having a good understanding of where a minimum speed should come in the corner. Now, occasionally we might be rolling a little bit too much speed, right? So let's take a look here at turn 5. Now, the second part of this I should have talked about is where that minimum speed comes depends on whether or not it's an entry or an exit speed corner, right? So turn 5 is sort of an exit speed corner, which means I want my minimum speed coming just before the apex point. Where let's talk about Billy Mitchell is a entry speed corner. There I'm okay with having my minimum speed come after the apex point. Okay, so turn 5, I should see your minimum speed come right in here. I think we are pretty solid at it, right? 76, pretty good. But then what ends up happening is actually your minimum speed comes here, you feed throttle, then you have to release off the throttle. You see that like ugliness a little bit on throttle there. We just need to clean that up a little bit. So that's a good indication to me here that we are actually probably rolled in a little bit too much speed. I'd rather see you be at 74, 73 mile an hour now so that you can have whoop, and be back to full throttle here. Now, obviously, we had a little bit of traffic with on this lap here. Turn 6, really solid here. Love what you're doing in turn 6. Minimum speed, 87, 84 after the apex point or right at the apex point. It's an entry speed corner that looks good. Turn 7 for right now. I wouldn't change much of what you're doing. I think that looks good. I would say if you really wanted to work on turn 7, I would say you carry full throttle a little bit deeper into the corner, have a full lift now, and then start to feed throttle back in. But it's not a big focus of mine. I'd rather keep really focused on where those minimum speeds are coming. All right. So turn 8, let's take a look here. Where's that minimum speed coming? Let's see here. 86 we hit right in here. So 86, great. What I don't like, again, is that rounded bottom. See how long we spend at 87, 87, 86, 86, and you see we're on throttle. So your actual minimum speed is correct, but you've got that rounded bottom. I'd much rather see you continue to bleed off speed, right? So that kind of means not getting to throttle too early. I'm coming off the brakes. I'm coasting, feed throttle, then back to flat here. Now I've got that minimum speed coming at the same point, but I'm dropping speed faster down to it, right? Carousel, really good right now. Love your commitment in. You're driving it hard through here. You're getting back to flat where I want to see you get back to flat, which is excellent. So right in here, this is where I want to see you get back to full throttle. We're pretty close on that for right now. So I like your approach to the carousel. That looks good. So now this next section, one small change is in this left-hander, we are sacrificing speed to hold it left, rightfully so, right? So in a corner like this, I want my minimum speed coming after the apex point, right? This left-hander is 1000% an entry speed corner, right? Because there's not really an acceleration zone until we break again, right? Like it's like a tiny little acceleration zone. The second part is anytime you're trying to sacrifice speed to hold it to the inside, you want the car, you're asking the car to rotate more, essentially, right? So those are the types of corners where I want to be trail braking past the apex. I would be coming off the brakes right now because the brakes is what keeps weight on the front nose and helps get the car rotated. So a longer trail brake in here would be better for you. Then boom, back to full throttle. That looks really, really good. All righty. So in the Canada corner, I think we just broke a little bit too deep here. We weren't able to get the car slowed up. So just back up your brake zone a little bit more. You're at peak brake pressure. You try to turn in. This is where our minimum speed should come. This is where I'm starting to accelerate. You'll see here, look how late your minimum speed comes in this corner. Way, way, way too late. So I think you just broke a little bit deep. No harm, no foul. I've done it 1,000 times. You'll do it more often. But just make sure you know in a corner like this, my minimum speed should be coming right here and using your eyes to glance to it, feeding throttle, and then trying to work it back to full throttle here. All righty. And then through Billy Mitchell, you're driving pretty well right now. I think if anything, I think their cones are set up a little late on the turning point. I think you turned smidged earlier. That looks good. Minimum speed came after the apex point. And then turn 14, I would ignore their cone. I think it's way too late. Anytime in a corner you turn in too late, you have to turn too aggressively, which causes you to overslow, right? You're asking the car to do a sharper angle, which is hard to do. So my turning point starts now, and I bend the car in slower so that my minimum speed comes in right about now, okay? So if you look at where does your minimum speed come in here, excuse me, your minimum speed comes way back in here, right? Look at that, 92 miles an hour. What do? You start to accelerate now. Where do we actually want to accelerate? Way over here, okay? So we need to be able to roll in more entry speed into a corner like this. So really what I'm trying to focus on is a deeper brake application. You should be able to get flat past this signboard, flat past it, light on the brakes, light on the brakes, light on the brakes. I'm starting to turn it earlier, but the distinction is slower. So I'm not apexing earlier, but I'm rolling in speed, rolling in speed, rolling in speed, right about here. Feed throttle, back to full throttle. And then I want to make sure I'm using every inch of this curb over here. If you're okay with using curbs in your car, my left side tires are way out over here, and you have plenty of time to work it back, obviously, onto the racetrack before the curb ends over there, right? So the major focus for me is a really clear understanding on where my minimum speed should come, being able to then glance into that point in the brake zone so you see how much longer of the corner is so that you can really roll in a lot more entry speed and start your accelerations at the right point. Oftentimes our minimum speeds are coming too early. You're feeding in the throttle too early, which is creating understeer, which is creating the choppy throttle, which makes you feel like you're at the limit, but you're at the limit because you're manipulating weight transfer incorrectly by that early throttle application. We want to delay that throttle, increase entry speeds, and you'll have just as good exits. Let me know if you have any questions on that at all, but super happy with the progress we're making here, and hopefully that makes sense.